Today we are going to be talking about what makes people want to buy your book cover. For indie authors specifically. Why? Because with traditionally published, they already know what they're doing most of the time, and as a result, they will design the cover for you, and you might get a little say in it, but not a whole lot of say in it ultimately. The only time you get full say in your cover is when you're hiring your own cover artist doing their own cover design, in which case learning and knowing these principles is incredibly important. Speaking of independently publishing authors, this Saturday, November 4th, from 10:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., there will be a massive independently published author signing. I'm so excited for it. We will have, I think 14 are planned to come, so hopefully none of them get sick and they're all able to come. We will have 14 independently published authors here. If you're interested in independently publishing or just want to make some new friends with independently publishing, or heck, even if you just want to buy some new amazing books, I would highly recommend coming and talking to these independently published authors. They are all fantastic. They've been wonderful to work with and coordinate with. I am so looking forward to it. So again, November 4th from 10:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Come stop by, purchase a book or two, talk to some indie authors, and make some friends. All right, now back to book cover design. With book cover design, you want to make sure that you have, unfortunately, there's a long list of things that you need. However, you don't necessarily need to do them all. The reason I say you don't need to do them all is because, yes, if you do them all, theoretically, you could be the most successful. However, it's also important to acknowledge that if you do all of these things, your book cover could look incredibly chaotic. It's about pulling it together smoothly, which is why you want a cover designer. Because your cover designer, as long as they are a true professional, should know what they are doing and know these principles and be able to apply them. If they don't, or if they don't do these principles, make sure that you suggest them to them, and that you might just, say, what if we did this, or what if we did that? Especially since you are the one who's going to be suggesting things, you can absolutely suggest, here's my idea for my ideal cover design. And you can absolutely go for that. All right. One benefit of hiring your own cover designer is that they know what they're doing. But the other benefit is that if you ever want to pay them again to do a redesign of your cover so it fits a new trend, you can absolutely do that. And that will actually help boost sales for your book if you're able to hit those trend changes, because people will think it's a new book and then want it again. And so as a result, it helps to boost your sales if you're continually hitting those trends. So if you have the money to do so, self-published authors can sometimes sell more if they're constantly changing their book covers. Why do you think traditionally published authors do the same thing? Have you ever seen those 25th year editions? Technically it's the 25th year, but it's also just, let's do an update to get more sales. And it works. Even if you've already bought the book, haven't you had moments where you're like, ooh, that 25th edition is looking real good, and so you buy it anyway? Or at least I know I have done it once or twice. And I know a lot of people on Bookstagram/Instagram have done it a lot as well. It's a guilty pleasure of the book and reading community. As a result, you can use this to your benefit. All right, let's jump in. Font. Font is going to be something that makes or breaks this. Why? Because certain genres have certain fonts. You may notice this already. For example, romance fonts tend to be very swirly and loopy and beautiful and elegant, whereas science fiction fonts tend to be very, sans serif fonts, very bold, very brick-like, very blocky. They tend to be very choppy. And this is actually an encouraging thing. You don't want to use a serif font with a science fiction novel, because then it automatically gives off the wrong feeling when people look at the book, and something just feels off, and as a result they don't want to pick it up. So make sure your font fits the genre. And we'll talk about ways to make sure that these principles apply here in a second, after we talk about the principles. So another principle that is putting the title at the top. Something in the actual cover draws your eye down to the bottom left of the cover. Then you follow along the author name. This is called the Z principle. Why? Because our eyes automatically go left to right to read, and then if we follow the cover design down to the bottom left, then we follow the name again, which means we've seen the whole cover. Nothing is going like boom, boom, boom. We're seeing the whole thing. It's one cohesive, our eyes feel natural, it feels good. The next thing is that you need to make sure it looks professional and matches other styles in your genre. Overall, you're going to see different styles for different genres. For example, you're also going to see this within certain years. So I would say make sure it's bestsellers within the current years when you look in your genre, because if you look for example, in the 90s, there were a lot of cover designs that would not fly today. The reason why is because they're outdated. So even if you love the 90s cover designs, maybe don't. If you want more sales, you're going to want to look at what's selling today versus what's selling back then. So you might love your cover design and be like, it's perfect, but if it's outdated, people aren't going to want to pick it up because they're just going to think, oh, it was sold years ago and I've never heard of it, so it's probably not any good. Unfortunately, that is the sad truth of self-publishing. People assume a ton based on the cover. It's pretty much entirely cover. The next thing that you're going to want to do is these next steps, which I actually found in an article. I believe it was by Reedsy, and it was really fantastically done. It was very helpful. I want to talk about some covers that follow these examples here in a minute, but first I want to tell you how to successfully do this with your own. So one thing that you can do after you've gotten your cover designed is, before you get your cover designed, sorry, I'm reading my notes in the wrong order. What you want to do before you get your cover designed is you want to research your favorite professionally done covers for your genre. Make sure it's for your genre. Even if you love historical fiction, if you didn't write a historical fiction, don't do it. Pick what's for your genre, but your favorite covers. Even if you've never read the book, pick your favorite covers. Then I would say, or at least Reedsy said, pick 10 to 15, put them all side by side, see what's similar about them, and see them in a way that is what is professional about them, but also what are things that you like about them. This means that you can use these same principles in your book cover, but also like your book cover. You don't have to suffer and just have a book cover for the sake of marketing. You should also like it. Now, yes, are there times when what you like and what is professional and appropriate to sell your book are not the same thing? Yes. Unfortunately true, but you can find a good middle ground, a good compromise, and this is a great way to do it, is finding the similarities between 10 or 15 of your favorite book covers within your genre. The next thing you're going to want to do once your design is created, once you've hired a professional, they have a portfolio with examples that you like and you think will fit what you're going for, and go with the styles that you noticed in your 10 to 15 books. Then once you have it designed, you go to a local bookstore manager, again, Reedsy, and ask them 3 questions. Do you think this cover will succeed in your bookstore? Would they know by looking at it that's self-published? If so, what makes them think that it's self-published? Because this is going to be a key. A lot of people have a bias against self-publish. It makes me sad, makes me want to cry, makes me upset. But it's true. If people think a book might be self-published, even a inkling that it might be self-published, they're immediately like, nope, that's out, I'm not reading it, because they assume it's a bad quality, which is a bad thing to do, but unfortunately it's something people do. People judge books by their cover quite literally. The next thing that you want to ask that bookstore manager is what other advice would they give in order to spice this cover up, in order to make it more appealing to customers with this genre. That is going to help you a lot, because bookstore managers actually know a lot about book covers. Why? Because they see what comes in and out. They see what sells. And it's not just popularity, it's book covers too. The next thing you want to do is go to your local library. Funnily enough, this is actually a very true statement, and I'm going to share a story about it too. Go to your public library and ask the same questions to the librarians. Do they think this cover will succeed in the library? Will it get checked out a lot? Would you know it's self-published by looking at it? If so, why? And what other advice would they give? Now, the reason why you want to do this is because they feel the same way. A lot of times we get donations for self-published books, and if we can tell they are a self-published book, and we can tell by the cover that it's not as high quality, oftentimes it gets tossed into the bookstore. And it's really tragic to admit that, it often takes someone reading the actual book and suggesting that it is actually good for them to believe it, especially if the cover doesn't sell how good the actual content is, unfortunately. That being said, this is why it's important to talk to your librarians, because they are also going to know what are good book covers, because they're not just selling books, which means that they aren't just doing the best-selling stuff. They're doing books from every era, and they can tell what is a good book cover and what's a bad book cover. All right, the next thing you're going to want to keep in mind is don't let family or friends tell you that a professional book cover isn't good enough. Professionals know what they're doing. Just because so-and-so doesn't like it doesn't mean that you should trash the whole thing. Also, don't let family or friends judge your self-book design cover and tell you it looks great even if it doesn't. Make sure that you go talk to, like I said, a bookstore manager, a librarian, maybe even have a random poll on Instagram or Facebook, because of the fact that you don't want your friends and family telling you, hey, this is great, when in reality they're just trying to spare your feelings. Or in the alternate case where it's a professional book cover and it's perfect and everyone else agrees that it's perfect except one person, don't let that one person's opinion make you throw it out. All right. So there were some recommendations that I found online for various ways to find a professional book cover designer. One being Fiverr. Obviously, you have to be careful with Fiverr. Make sure that they have a professional portfolio that looks good and they're not just claiming to be a professional. Make sure their portfolio speaks for itself. Next is 99designs.com. I don't know how well that one works. I have never worked with it personally, but it was recommended several times online. And the last one is look inside of a professionally done book cover with a traditional publisher and see if the artist is listed. And if you contact them, they just might do a commission for you. It might be more expensive because they tend to work with traditional publishers, but that also means that your book cover will be on par with everyone else, which means that your sales are going to skyrocket. Now, we're going to talk about some examples of how these things can actually change the way your book works. All right, we're going to talk about font, the Z principle, and then what helps your cover to lure in the right audience. So, for example, The Martian. It has been a fantastic science fiction book for a long time, and it has even been made into a movie. It was originally self-published. This self-published novel did so well that they decided to traditionally publish it, and when they traditionally published it, it did even better. Why? Because A, they got a professional book cover designer, and B, he was able to not have to do his own marketing. But A is being the most prominent. Now, it follows two of the principles that we talked about today, and the third one that we kind of cursorily mentioned. Make sure the font fits your genre. He originally had a Times New Roman-based serif font. That is not a science fiction font. It doesn't feel right. Generally, it gives off vibes of a science textbook rather than a science fiction novel. It also gives off feelings of being possibly even a fantasy novel. He got a lot of people buying his books thinking that he was talking about actual Martians because of his font and because on his front cover all he had was a picture of Mars. He didn't indicate in any way that it was a science fiction novel that did not involve aliens because the title was The Martian and only had a picture of Mars. Hence, this is where the I didn't mention it yet, but it's important comes in. Make sure, as I said before, that your book cover matches other designs that are similar to yours. What he didn't take into account was the fact that other science fiction novels that don't involve aliens have a human on the front cover to help people indicate this is about a person in space, not an alien. As a result of that, when they traditionally published it, they changed the font to be a more blocky, stocky, science fiction friendly font. That helped make it feel already more natural. Then they also made it clear that it wasn't about aliens by putting an astronaut on the front cover. And the way that they did it, the astronaut's helmet is closest to his name, which means that it went title, draws you down to the bottom left, like we talked with the Z formation, and then name, which meant that it both had the Z formation and the appropriate font. And now, bonus points, it fit with the rest of his genre. People knew that it was about a human because it was an astronaut in a spacesuit. So less people who were into aliens bought it, and more people who were into actual fun science fiction with just humans bought it, which meant it connected with a totally different set of readers that would have never picked up the book before. So this is a great example of how it feels a little bit more natural to the eyes and a little bit more natural to the audience, and they can make a lot of assumptions that feel natural. I wish I had more time to talk, but we've hit our official 15 minutes. If you have any questions about book cover design or about Indie Author Day, please comment down below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.